Native Land Pod is a production of iHeart Radio in partnership with Reasoned Choice Media.
Welcome home, everybody. Let's get to part 2 of our conversation. If you tuned in on Thursday of this week, you know we had a very intense and warm, full conversation about the dynamics of Black men and Black women and how it penetrates our politics and where we are today. We're going to pick up now with part 2 of that conversation. And just so you're not confused, we want to bring you up to speed on where we left the conversation yesterday. So you'll hear a few moments of talk from Thursday's episode as we bleed into this week's MiniPod. Drop us a comment. Let us know what you think.
So when we heard all throughout the cycle, voters want to know, but who is Kamala? And I think a lot of us read that as it's because she's Black. And I don't think it was that simplistic. I think Black people wanted to know, who is she? Just like we wanted to know, who is he with Barack Obama, who had an experience that I can't even relate to as a Black person having grown up in this country. And so that thirst is real. And if there were takeaways from it, it is folks they want to be able to trace you. They want to track you and trace you so that they know for the decisions that have yet to come, that they instinctually feel that you've got some options that you're going to consider, even if you're not considering them out loud before you make a decision. And I want to know that as a Black person, that one, you're gonna have an experience in this country that will have some resonance with mine.
Yeah.
So that when you're confronted by the question, that you're gonna have some sensibilities and sensitivities that reflect my lived experience too, and not just theirs.
And that is such a great point, because now we're at a point in this country's history where people are like, will the real fighters please stand up? Terrance, I know you have some data to talk about where we are now and where folks expect us to go from here, particularly through the lens of Black voters, because this is an all Black everything podcast. So let's go ahead and get into that.
Yeah, for sure, Angela. You know, we, along with understanding where Black voters were in 2024 and why they voted the way they voted, we've been curious about where Black voters are now, how they feel about some of Trump's actions, how they feel about how Democrats are responding to those actions. And we see a couple of very important trends. Number one is that a majority of Black voters do not agree with the way that Democrats are responding to Trump in Congress. Only 46% of Black voters approve of the way that Democrats have been responding to Trump in Congress. 46% of the most loyal voters in the Democratic coalition. Mm-hmm. This represents a crisis. Black Democrats are not where their electorate wants them to be. And then the second question over here that we got from Data for Progress asks the question, which of the following statements is closest to your opinion on how Democrats in Congress should approach the Trump administration? 22% of Black folks say that Democrats should keep their heads down and allow Trump and Republicans to expose themselves as failures. 22% say just let them fail. But 78% of Black folks, the overwhelming majority, want to see Democrats fight like hell. And so that is some of the frustration that we are picking up, the righteous indignation from the 73 million Americans that voted no to Donald Trump, and that want to see what we've been describing as less of a minority party and more of an opposition party. Opposition is action. It is an active resistance to what is happening, and Black voters and Democratic voters want to see more of that. On the next slide, you'll see the impact of this, right? You'll see that when we just asked just pure approval rating, do you approve or disapprove of the job that Trump is doing and the job that Democrats are doing? Well, on the left there, you'll see, and I'm just going to give just the Black perspective, which is all the way at the bottom. In the first quarter of Donald Trump's first term in 2017, only 15% of Black folks agreed with what he was doing. 15%. Today, in the first quarter of the second term, 33% of Black folks approve of the job that Donald Trump is doing.
Are we watching the same movie? What is wrong with these people?
We have work to do, Angela.
It's so much worse. It is so much worse this time.
So much worse. It's so much worse. We have work to do connecting the dots for Black folks on how the actions that he's taking are actually hurting people, how tariffs will raise the price on goods that Americans already can't afford, how he's cutting FAA while planes are falling from the sky, and cutting National Weather Service while weather emergencies are killing people. We have to connect these dots. He's not just cutting jobs in Washington. he's cutting programs that protect and secure our communities.
It hasn't knocked on their front door yet.
If we interrogated it, though, just a little bit further, if government is the object of a lot of your pain, the letters that you get from the government, when you interact with it, your whole time is longer. When you do get a check, it ain't as big as you want it to be, and then they coming back around to collect that from you. If and you hear that they're shut down, and you hear that there are going to be layoffs for this center of people, this population of people who you haven't felt served by, I'm not certain that you're going to have a big cheerleading squad there. If you see that the first departments that are being shuttered in the government are serving international purposes, when a lot of us are saying, I need streetlights.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
We need running water that I can trust my kids to drink because it isn't toxic. If we draw these things back to the themes that I think all of us have heard in our places and in our spaces, it doesn't alarm me that the thing that you hear about is we're going to cut government jobs. That's good. And you might get some checks back for the savings that we may achieve. That might be good too. And that of all the things that they're going after and that they're attacking, they seem to be attacking the stuff that ain't serving me anyway. Now, whether or not any of that is all the way true, if we were to fully interrogate it, which I don't believe it to be the case, but these are real themes for us. Fight with Mexico when I believe Mexicans are taking my job?
Right.
Go fight them.
That's good perspective, Andrew. That's so good.
So I think it isn't that our people are off the reservation because we don't have to know all the details to know when we're being screwed.
Yeah.
That's right.
Or when somebody else is.
They get screwed by everybody, though. I mean, that's
we all the way round.
Yeah.
And is your screwing more lasting and more painful than the one I'm going to get from that guy?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of folks might,
If you're a guy in Chicago where Greg Abbott busts people in and now housing is an issue for you and jobs are an issue for you because of all of these migrants, and you see that Trump is bringing in somebody to take the migrants back out, those people are not upset at Donald Trump today.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I think that there is a reality that we have to wrestle with, that the Democratic Party's failures on messaging is biting them in the ass daily.
Mm-hmm.
To Andrew's point that you got to fight at every round of the fight, George Foreman and Ali, when that fight happened in that day, Ali went rounds and rounds with him to wear him out till he could knock him out.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, I have to be in this with this big joker who's got more size than me, more ability than me right now, but I got to box you every round. When you got Hakeem Jeffries down there making excuses for Chuck Schumer right now, that's not helpful for Black America to believe that the Democratic Party is on brand and on message.
Mm-hmm.
If either you're tone deaf and not comprehending what is going on in the communities and the underbelly of this country, or you are just so committed to your way of doing that you think that you're committed to losing. Because we have been committed to a strategy of niceties and getting along to go along, and people are sick of that shit.
Yeah.
And we're standard bearers for the status quo of everything that has, frankly, the Justice Department, I couldn't tell you, honestly, how I feel about it because it'd be very personal and probably irresponsible for the larger scheme of it. But if one party is saying we represent the status quo and that we keep all things as they are, or else this is an attack on democracy and the way it shows up in your life. So we need to keep justice and keep people who are going to disrupt that out of there. I was like, no, justice has been bad for us since they created it. FBI was created to terrorize our leaders. Mm-hmm. You talk to me about a CIA and a this and a that. All of those I consider not just enemies of the state, but enemies of my people is what a lot of folks draw a conclusion on. And all I can derive from your message is that you are the standard bearer for the status quo, government as is, more of it.
That's so good.
Who's getting with that?
I think it's a travesty that Andrew is not on somebody's think tank, because I think that perspective is so key, Andrew. And I'm gonna probably annoy Angela and Andrew because I say this every episode. I have to say, yes, messaging by the Democratic Party was a huge failure. Messaging in journalism and media was also a huge failure. That they were not giving people information, that they treated news coverage and fact-finding as though it was entertainment. You bring on a Klan member and a Nation of Islam and then say, let's get get ready to rumble and put that out as entertainment for people. So you didn't have a reliable source of information. Where you got your information was from Podcast Bros, was from your Instagram feed, which was devastating and disappointing to our democratic process. Gary, you said something, and I'm looking for a little bit of hope here. I will give it to Angela every week. I think does a good job of like trying to, not even her intention, just naturally trying to give me hope because she knows I'm pretty flatlined. And her trauma response, I think, is I'm gonna act, I'm gonna move. And mine is I just kind of feel petrified. When we were together, you said, y'all keep talking like it ain't gonna be another election. And there are 49.5 million Black people out there who believe that. Andrew wanted to get into what's happening in Georgia. What's happening in Georgia with the executive order and purging voters from the rolls and making it more difficult for votes to be counted is going to happen. It's been happening all across the country, and we'll continue to see more of that. I do not believe that we will see another free and fair election when it gets to midterms, and particularly not beyond that. What do you say to that? Like, because you are passionate, and I know you have an election in Louisiana
on
coming
Saturday.
up. You want to talk about? Yes, yeah.
Saturday.
So I'm kicking the ball to you. Give me some hope, brother, if you can.
Sister, we have never had fair elections. We have never had fair elections. There have never been a period in history of this country where Black folks have lived in a space of fair elections.
Yeah.
I live in South Louisiana, where we still fighting for a congressional district that we drew in 1990, got kicked out by the Supreme Court, fighting in the Supreme Court in 2020 to get it again, got a congressman elected to it, and they trying to kick him out again. So this has never been a fair system to us. The reality, though, is we make it fairer by our struggle.
More fair. That's right.
We make it fairer. It is on us, and I think that some of us want to absolve ourselves from the responsibility that we have in this hour to carry this burden. I don't enjoy this burden, but it is our burden to bear. And for me, the hope is in you. The hope is in Angela. The hope is in Andrew. The hope is in Terrance and all this badass data he given us to inspire and motivate Black people to get up and claim their power. To let Black folks know that if you are in Georgia, you are in the third blackest state in America, and they trying to take you off the rolls, and the only way they can write you off is if you let them.
That's it.
And that is our job in this hour, to be the beacon of hope and light and truth to our people. The only way they are successful is if we lay down. That is the only way they will be successful. Will they restructure the government? Yes, it needs to be restructured. We get to come back and take it back. I believe we are in a dawn of a third reconstruction of sorts in this country. And I think that as we navigate that, the question for us is, what do we want fairness to look like for the next 100 years? Because every time there is a great, I heard Sean King say this, and this is somebody else who's been decimated by speaking truth in these hours, right? Sean King talked about the peaks and the valleys, right? And that following every peak for us as a people, there'll be a deep valley. And how we dig ourselves out of that valley and move ourselves forward is the question. I think that the organizing we're seeing in this hour was not happening prior to this level of pain and frustration. And the reality is, every time we've seen great upheaval and progress for our people is because of the shared pain that we were in. The shared pain of slavery brought us through the revolution that created that first Reconstruction in this country. The shared pain of Jim Crow and the civil rights being denied to us created the upheaval that happened in the 60s. The shared pain that endures between Black folks today and working class, poor white people in America will change this country for the next 100 years. And while I don't like the things that are taking place, I take it as a badge of honor that I get to be in the field with you all today.
Right back at you, Gary. Thank you for that.
Can I respond to some of that, man? Because I'm so appreciative to the work that Gary's doing in Louisiana. I believe this, and I'm pretty sure I got this from Gary. It's a quote I've been saying for so long. I don't know who I got it from. So take credit for it if I got it from you, Gary. But the truth is that the South are not red states. They are oppressed states, right? There are 3 states in the South that are, in fact, blacker than Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, where we do have an opportunity to to replace the blue wall across the Midwest with a black ass wall across the South that is more durable and that changes the political map that we've been fighting on. The second thing I want to say is that, Black folks don't want to, and I've been saying this since 2022 when Democrats first started running on defending democracy, Black folks don't want to defend a system that has failed them. Right. Mm-hmm. Now we can recruit Black people into fixing democracy. And I think right now he's broken it substantially enough that we can recruit some folks into it, because there are some levers of our democracy, the things that protect us, separation of power and rule of law. There ain't nobody above the law, free and fair elections and peaceful transfer of power. He has broken all of this shit. He has broken rule of law, broken peaceful transfer of power, broken independent media, broken free markets. We now have to recruit our folks. And it was Barbara Jordan who said in a, it was Benjamin Franklin who first said that if we have a democracy, if we can keep it. Mm-hmm. I would say in this moment, we have a democracy if we can take it back. And the Barbara Jordan quote that inspires me in this moment was something she said during her Nixon impeachment speech, when she said for the first 200 years, Black folks weren't included in We the People. And because that's exactly right. And because we were not included in that Constitution, had to fight and toil and sacrifice to be included. That is what makes us in the best position to defend it. And that's where we are. We got to recruit our folks to defend this thing and take it back.
Thank you, Terrance. And maybe that's where we go from here, which is maybe we close with some of the inspirational words or quotes that maybe give us hope here. Gary, as you were talking about the peaks and the valleys, which I think we all understand, I was reminded of something my pastor then, now Bishop McAllister said, which is, Andrew, never, ever, ever buy real estate in the valley. And what he meant is when you're in the valley of your life, whatever the circumstance is, when you're in that down trough, don't camp out. It's temporary. So with despair or absence of hope, we may be in the valley, but that's not a time to buy real estate. It's not a time to camp out. You spend that time struggling on and strategizing on the get out of the valley and not camping out there on real estate that you buy when you're in that deep, dark place. So hopefully more of us will do that. Angela?
I'm so grateful for you all joining us today. Clearly, this is just the beginning of a conversation that we scratched the surface on, and it needs to be many more. So I hope y'all will come back over and over again, and that we can keep broadening this. I will say, just in full disclosure, part of the reason why I wanted to ensure that you all could be here is a conversation that Tiff and I really have been having all week. I talked about it with Andrew this morning. We saw some in a space we were recently all in, we saw some of the tensions that exist. And until we start to unpack them and pull them apart, the pain that Tiff referenced, the pain that you referenced, Gary, the lack of trust that exists, the many layers that are Black people that we can appreciate, but also have to understand that at some point, it is, as much as I don't like a melting pot, we got to melt for our power, because that's where the math is in the melt. Right. So I hope that we will continue to push against our own biases, try to uncover our own blind spots and really figure out where we can meet our folks in the pain, in the trauma, and then also in the triumph, because we deserve it. This is absolutely the place that we built. And so it absolutely must serve us, and we should stop at nothing less. So I appreciate y'all, and I'll defer to my sister Tiff.
I just echo everything you said, Angela, and Gary and Terrance, I really appreciate your boldness. Gary, I appreciate that you lead with authenticity. I love the ad that you did when you ran for Senate. With the blunt in the middle of the shield.
She does that for a lot of reasons.
For a lot of reasons, but I will say, because I think so many people are afraid to lead with their convictions, and I wonder what would have happened had Vice President Harris run a campaign that led with her convictions, instead of trying to walk the middle of the road and appeal to people. To your point, when your Black folks is your base, that's who you take care of. But they have such a hard on for white folks. And I think we will continue to see people who try to walk that middle of the road become political roadkill increasingly. Terrance, your data is so crucially important to how we march forward. And you've both given me a little bit of hope today, a little bit of fight today. And I'm writing a lot about this. So I'll be following up with both of you guys to get your input, just to make sure that I'm on the right side of history as I try to capture this moment and what's happening between Black men and Black women. So I thank you. And I want to shout out our brother Andrew, who's our resident Black man on the panel.
Resident Black
every
man.
week.
Good to have company, y'all.
Yes. Well, because Andrew, I feel like we have, I feel like Andrew and I have a lot of philosophical conversations whenever we have the pleasure of being in the same city, in the same vicinity. And so I think a lot of this touched on some of the conversations we have. And it touched on a lot of aspects of my personal life, you know, as I'm navigating some of these opinions and the mirror that some Black men have been to me. So it's just been a really helpful, thriving conversation that I hope dwarfs some of these podcast bros conversation and some of these social media clips that go viral with Black men and Black women talking about why they can't stand each other and who did who wrong. I hope that we've tackled this with a lot more depth and grace and input and purpose. So thank you.
To be continued.
Yes.
To be continued, everybody. And again, Terrance and Gary, we just want to say welcome home.
Welcome home, y'all.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us on the pod.
Thank you.
Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.